We've got breaking news from the NFL. Mike Tomlin stepping down as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's the latest from our Jonathan Jones. Tomlin fresh off a 30-6 loss to the Texans in the wild-card round of the playoffs, extending his postseason losing streak to an NFL record 7 games. It closes the book on Tomlin's 19 seasons in Pittsburgh, where he steps away as the NFL's longest tenured head coach. He leaves the Steelers with a 193, 114-2 career record, as well as one championship, beating the Cardinals in Super Bowl 43.
Maybe an argument that you could have fired him too, but either way, we are focused on this big breaking news with our Jonathan Jones joining us now. JJ, Mike Tomlin stepping down as the head coach after nearly 2 decades in Pittsburgh. How did we get here?
So not a ton of conversation, it appears, between Mike Tomlin and Art Rooney II, Omar Khan, the general manager there. It's almost as though everyone understood what needed to take place, especially, and of course, after the Monday night game, how non-competitive the Steelers were down the stretch, that it became very clear and obvious to Mike T that it was time to move forward. And so on Tuesday morning, he informed the owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Art Rooney II, that he intended to step away from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so he is still under contract to the Steelers through next season. We'll see what ultimately, and we can get into what he's going to be doing next and all of those things. I know we're going to cover it, but for the immediate, we know that Mike Tomlin is not going to coach the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2026. We know that the longest tenured active head coach with one franchise, nearly 20 years, no losing season, of course, is not going to be with the one franchise that he has known any longer. And of course, this is about the lack of postseason success. You know, the Pittsburgh Steelers, I believe, would have kept Mike Tomlin if Mike Tomlin wanted to be there. Sure, change was certain to happen and take place moving forward, but they weren't going to fire Mike Tomlin. So if he was not going to coach them in 2026, it was going to be his decision. And the Steelers making very clear that this is Mike Tomlin's decision, that he is no longer going to be with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and whether it is the 2026 season or he takes a year off and it's the 2027 season, we all expect to see Mike Tomlin back on the sideline at some point.
I'm taking a look now. We do have a statement from Art Rooney II, the Steelers president, just put out on social media. I'll read you just a bit here, JJ. He says, quote, "It's hard for me to put into words the level of respect and appreciation I have for Coach Tomlin. He guided the franchise to our 6th Super Bowl championship and made the playoffs 13 times during his tenure." I mean, a lot of nice things being said about Mike Tomlin, the head coach. And so when you think about replacing what he's been able to do, I know you mentioned those playoff wins, and those kind of came at a premium, but either way, replacing Mike Tomlin, this is certainly going to be a tough task for the Steelers.
Well, there's no question. I mean, you know, this is obviously the first time that the Pittsburgh Steelers have done this in what I would call the modern NFL, and that is with all due respect to Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin's predecessor, but what these interviews now are, right? And how coaching has evolved, how football has evolved, right? The Steelers, you know, there are some teams that do this every other year, and in some cases almost every year. They're used to it. They're used to the cadence and rhythm of interviews. This does not happen. This is unique. I mean, you talk about Chuck Noll and Bill Cowher to Mike Tomlin. This is only going to be the 4th head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers since like the Vietnam War, right? I mean, look at that, right? I mean, like the Raiders have had 4 coaches over like 2 presidents. And this is what you're talking about with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So this is going to be a top-tier job. You know, we can discuss whether they have the quarterback. And look, it doesn't appear that Aaron Rodgers is going to be back next year. We'll see. I don't think the Steelers are going to have any knowledge of that anytime soon. But when you are a head coaching candidate, there's a couple things you look for. You look at quarterback, you look at ownership, you look at general manager, because all of those things mean what is your success rate and potential for success immediately, and what is your runway. And with the Pittsburgh Steelers, there's nowhere else where you have greater stability in the NFL, right? So this immediately, even though they don't know who their quarterback is next year, immediately makes them one of the top jobs on the open market. Who they're going to go after, honestly, I'd be guessing right now. In the past, the Pittsburgh Steelers have gone after a coordinator. They've gone after a coordinator that maybe you weren't necessarily thinking about, right? Bill Cowher all those years ago, Mike Tomlin 19 years ago himself. But this is, in some ways, uncharted water for the Pittsburgh Steelers in, of course, the 21st century.
JJ, when it comes to Mike Tomlin, especially over the last couple of years, we keep talking about that playoff drought. What do you say, I guess, to the people who are courting Mike Tomlin? I don't want to take away from anything that he's been able to accomplish, but you kind of have one side of the coin where, like, he's done just enough to continue those winning seasons, never had a losing season, but hasn't quite gotten back to the big game, in quite some time here. So if you are evaluating him as a head coach for some of those open positions here, how much does that narrative play into a decision, if at all?
Yeah, I don't think it does. And if we can, let's go ahead and put up the graphic of the other 8 jobs that are open and where they are, because we can go and tick through these each one. But I'm telling you that these teams would absolutely do criminal things in order to have 19 straight non-losing seasons. Every single one of those teams, short of the Baltimore Ravens, who essentially have equaled that more or less, right? They'd kill for it. Yeah, you can talk about the lack of playoff success, and each year is a year unto itself and in a vacuum and all that. And yes, you're going to want to get over the hump. But every single one of those teams that you just saw in that graphic above the Baltimore Ravens would love to have the sort of success for 5 years, 7, 10, and certainly 19 years that Mike Tomlin has enjoyed. That's a legitimate question, right? That, oh, you haven't had the playoff success. And Mike Tomlin, whether if he takes a year off and wanders the wilderness, if he goes into television, if he locks himself away in a remote land and only watches tape and talks football theory and strategy with folks, we'll see what he winds up doing. But he'll have to get figured out how to play better, how to get his teams to play better in January. But each one of those teams, if they had the opportunity to hire Mike Tomlin, they would.
It feels very similar to the John Harbaugh situation, where it just felt like he had reached his peak with that organization in Baltimore. So 2 very unexpected coaching candidates in this cycle. JJ, you mentioned that Tomlin still has time left on his contract, about a year left to go here. If a coach is wanting to hire Tomlin, because again, this isn't we have fired Mike Tomlin. This is him stepping away from the game. So how much does that decision impact the hiring process for Tomlin going forward?
That's a great question. And, you have to sort of apply, and I don't know this for a fact right now in this moment, but you have to apply what we know about the Pittsburgh Steelers, what the sort of mutual respect and admiration is there for Mike Tomlin, that I can absolutely see a world where the Steelers let him go out of his contract. Where what I mean to say is, if another team wants to hire him in 2026, that they do not require draft pick compensation. That, hey, Mike, for the nearly 2 decades that you gave us here, you go off, you have reserved the right and earned the right to do and go wherever you please without giving us back a draft pick. So I could see that taking place. If Mike Tomlin wishes to go into television for 2026 or, again, anything else, then, the Steelers, there was a report out there, I think last year, that the 2027 season is an option year for Mike Tomlin. So they won't pick up the option, and the date is going to come in March or whatever. Obviously, they're not going to pick up that option. So if he takes a year off, then in 2027, he certainly would be released from his contract, and there would be no draft pick compensation. We have seen that previously. Obviously, Sean Payton, after he left the Saints retained his rights, and then the Saints had to get draft pick compensation from the Denver Broncos in order for the Broncos to hire Sean Payton. I personally, right now, in the heat of the moment, would be surprised if the Pittsburgh Steelers requires that of any team should Mike Tomlin decide to coach in 2026.
We will have to wait and see. JJ, before we get there, though, how would you describe Mike Tomlin's legacy, his career, when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Absolutely incredible. I think that when you look at some of the coaches who are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame and then you compare Mike Tomlin's resume to theirs, it is a Hall of Fame resume. And I understand that I'm saying that and the last 7-8 years and the lack of playoff success is right here staring us in the face. I do get that. And Bill Belichick is up for Pro Football Hall of Fame and because there's not a 5-year waiting period for a head coach, there's only one. And so, yeah, he doesn't measure up to that, but I could see him absolutely donning a gold jacket in Canton, Ohio very soon, because he does have that. The consistency, the leader of men, that phrase is thrown around, Haley, everywhere, right? Especially in the NFL. And people don't really know what it means. If you're not in the NFL, if you're not around, you hear that phrase, you're like, I don't even know what that means, right? But when you see Mike Tomlin, when you are around him, when you listen even to press conferences, that's the leader of men. That is the archetype that you were talking about. And yes, you need more from Mike T in January. Is he perfect? No. But again, every team is out here paying these coaches somewhere between $10 and $20 million. And then they're firing them 2.5, 3 years later, and not getting into the postseason. And Mike Tomlin has been a model of consistency that, yes, you did want more these last couple years, but one of the best in this new modern era to ever do it.
Certainly is, and we will wait to see what that next stop on his journey will be. JJ, we know you'll be on top of it. Get back to your phone. I'm sure it's blowing up at this point. A busy, busy day in the NFL this Tuesday. Mike Tomlin stepping down as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. JJ laid it out there for us, and if you missed it, here's the numbers on your screen. Truly special stuff in Pittsburgh. No losing seasons, although the postseason has been a concern as of late. We will wait to see what's next for Mike Tomlin.
After the break, we continue this breaking news from the NFL. Mike Tomlin stepping down as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. We will talk to a man who played for the coach himself, Bryant McFadden, joining us next on theCUBE.